Norway is a small nation, just 5.5 million people, perched on the edge of the Arctic Circle, a country that spends half the year in darkness and the other half in endless daylight, a land of fjords, mountains, and harsh winters that would make most people weep with despair. By all conventional measures of geography and climate, Norway should be a poor country, a struggling nation scraping out a meager existence from a barren and unforgiving landscape, a place where survival is a daily battle and prosperity is a distant dream. And yet, paradoxically, Norway is one of the richest, most prosperous, and most equal societies on earth, a country where poverty has been virtually eliminated, where education and healthcare are free for everyone, where the streets are clean, the air is pure, and the citizens enjoy a standard of living that is the envy of the entire world. The world is mesmerized by Norway's success, looking at it with a mixture of awe and confusion, unable to understand how a nation with such limited resources, such a small population, and such a hostile climate could have achieved such extraordinary prosperity. The typical explanation is simple and seductive. Norway discovered oil in the late 1960s, and the oil money transformed a backward fishing nation into a wealthy welfare state. But this explanation, while superficially attractive, is dangerously misleading, a convenient myth that obscures the far more complex and far more fascinating truth about Norway's rise to wealth and power. Oil is only a small part of the story, a part that has been vastly exaggerated by those who want to sell a simple story to a world that craves easy answers. The truth is that Norway was already a remarkably wealthy and well-governed nation long before the first drop of oil was extracted from the North Sea. In fact, the foundation of Norway's prosperity was laid centuries ago, built on a culture of hard work, thrift, discipline, and social trust that is deeply embedded in the Norwegian character. The oil simply amplified an existing success story, providing the fuel for a welfare state that was already being built. But the true source of Norway's wealth lies in something far more profound. A unique set of historical, cultural, and institutional factors that have made Norway an exceptional nation, a model of what a society can achieve when it is built on the principles of equality, solidarity, and collective responsibility. The world has much to learn from Norway, but before we can understand its success, we must first abandon the simplistic myths that have been constructed around it. Norway is not rich because of oil. Norway is rich because it has built an extraordinary society that is capable of generating and sustaining wealth across generations. And the story of how it did this is one of the most remarkable and inspiring stories in human history. To understand Norway's ascent from poverty to prosperity, we must first travel back in time to the era of Vikings and fishermen, to a Norway that was a scattered collection of isolated coastal communities, a country that was deeply impoverished, brutally poor, and utterly dependent on the whims of the sea and the harshness of its climate. The Norwegians of the Middle Ages were a proud and fiercely independent people, but they were also a people who lived on the edge of survival, a people who watched their children die of starvation and disease, a people who knew that a single bad winter could wipe out an entire village and plunge them into a desperate struggle for existence. For centuries, Norway was the poorest and most isolated of the Nordic countries, dominated first by Denmark and then by Sweden, a colony that was treated as a source of raw materials and a market for finished goods, a nation that was systematically exploited and marginalized by its more powerful neighbors. The Danish kings, who ruled Norway for more than 4 centuries, extracted timber, fish, and minerals from the country, leaving the Norwegians to languish in poverty and despair. The Swedish kings, who took control in the early 19th century, were little better, viewing Norway as a backwater that was useful only for its resources and its strategic position. The early 19th century was a period of profound crisis for Norway. The Napoleonic Wars had devastated the country, and the union with Sweden was deeply unpopular, a constant reminder of Norway's subjugation and humiliation. But out of this darkness came a spark of hope, a cultural and political awakening that would transform Norway forever. The Norwegian people rediscovered their history, their language, and their identity, building a new sense of national pride that would eventually lead to full independence in 1905. This was a critical turning point, a moment when Norway began to chart its own course, to build its own institutions, and to create a society that reflected its own unique values and aspirations. The late 19th and early 20th centuries were also a period of rapid economic development, driven by Norway's abundant natural resources and the entrepreneurial spirit of its people. The fishing industry was revolutionized. transforming a subsistence activity into a global export powerhouse. The shipping industry expanded at a breathtaking rate, making Norway one of the world's great maritime nations. The hydroelectric power industry harnessed the country's vast waterfalls, providing cheap and abundant energy that fueled industrialization. And the shipbuilding and manufacturing industries grew rapidly, creating jobs and wealth across the country. By the time oil was discovered in the North Sea, Norway was already a prosperous, stable, and well-governed nation, a country that was well prepared to manage the vast wealth that was about to be thrust upon it. The hidden power of Norway lies not in its oil wealth, but in the extraordinary political, economic, and social institutions that were built over more than a century of careful and deliberate development. These institutions, which include a highly egalitarian social welfare system, a remarkably transparent and accountable government, a uniquely cooperative model of labor management relations, and an innovative and internationally competitive private sector, are the real engines of Norway's prosperity, the silent and uncelebrated forces that make the country work so well and benefit so many people. The oil is simply the fuel that powers the engine, not the engine itself. The first hidden layer is the social welfare state, a system that guarantees every citizen access to free education, free healthcare, and a generous social safety net that protects them against the vicissitudes of life. This is not a recent invention, but a system that has been built gradually and deliberately over more than a century, a system that reflects the deep Norwegian belief in the importance of solidarity and collective responsibility. The Norwegian welfare state is not a burden on the economy. It is an investment in human capital, a system that enables every citizen to reach their full potential, regardless of their background or circumstances. The second hidden layer is the institutional infrastructure that supports the welfare state. Norway has some of the lowest levels of corruption in the world, a political system that is remarkably transparent and accountable, and a civil service that is professional, competent, and dedicated to the public interest. This institutional integrity is the foundation upon which everything else is built, a source of trust and confidence that allows the government to function effectively and the economy to grow vigorously. The Norwegian people trust their government, and their government trusts them, creating a virtuous cycle of cooperation and mutual benefit that is rare in the modern world. The third hidden layer is the Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund, the largest such fund in the world, a massive pool of capital that has been built from the country's oil revenues and is now worth more than $1 trillion. The fund is a remarkable achievement, a testament to the far-sightedness and self-discipline of Norwegian leaders who decided to invest the country's oil wealth for the benefit of future generations, rather than squandering it on immediate consumption. The fund is invested in thousands of companies across the globe, making Norway a silent but powerful player in the global economy, a nation that derives a significant portion of its income from its investments. The fourth hidden layer is a unique Norwegian model of labor management relations, a system of tripartite cooperation that brings together unions, employers, and the government to negotiate wages, working conditions, and social policy. This system, which has evolved over more than a century, has created a remarkably stable and cooperative industrial relations climate, minimizing strikes, maximizing productivity, and ensuring that the benefits of economic growth are shared broadly across society. The Norwegian model is a powerful alternative to the adversarial model that prevails in many other countries, a model that demonstrates a potential for cooperation to generate prosperity and social harmony. The hidden power of Norway is not oil. It is the deep institutional, cultural, and social foundations that make it possible for a small, cold, and isolated country to achieve such extraordinary prosperity. And these foundations are the real reason why Norway is so rich. The impact of Norway's extraordinary prosperity extends far beyond its own borders, influencing global trade, international development, and environment in ways that are profound and far-reaching. Norway's vast sovereign wealth fund, invested in thousands of companies across the globe, gives it a significant and growing influence over corporate governance and global finance, a silent power that is reshaping behavior of multinational corporations and influencing the direction of the global economy. The fund has become a powerful force for ethical investing, pushing companies to adopt more sustainable and responsible business practices, and using its massive leverage to promote positive change. Norway is also a major player in international development, contributing a significant portion of its national income to foreign aid, focusing its efforts on building sustainable development and long-term prosperity in the world's poorest countries. The country has been a consistent advocate for peace and conflict resolution, playing a mediating role in conflicts from the Middle East to East Asia, and serving as a model of responsible and principled internationalism. The Norwegian government, guided by the values of solidarity and collective responsibility that have shaped its domestic policies, has become a powerful voice for global justice and human dignity. Norway's prosperity has also made it a leader in environmental protection, a country that is deeply committed to reducing its carbon footprint and transitioning to a green economy. The country has invested heavily in renewable energy, carbon capture, and sustainable technologies, becoming a global pioneer in the fight against climate change and a beacon of hope for a world that is struggling to address the existential threat of global warming. Norway's commitment to the environment is not just a moral choice, but a strategic one, a recognition that its own long-term prosperity depends on the health and stability of the global ecosystem. But the global ripple of Norway's success extends beyond its policies and investments, inspiring a new generation of thinkers and policymakers who are increasingly looking to Norway as a model for how to build a prosperous, just, and sustainable society. Norway's success challenges a dominant neoliberal paradigm that has shaped global policy for the past 4 decades, offering a powerful alternative vision of what is possible, a vision that is based on the principles of solidarity, collective responsibility, and the common good. The Norwegian model is a living example of the potential for social democracy to deliver extraordinary results, a model that is increasingly relevant in a world that is desperately searching for alternatives to the failed policies of the past. Yet, despite its extraordinary success, Norway is not a utopia. It faces real challenges and serious vulnerabilities that could undermine its prosperity and threaten its stability. The most obvious challenge is its dependence on oil, a dependence that has made the Norwegian economy dangerously exposed to fluctuations in global energy prices and the long-term decline in oil demand. Although Norway is better prepared than most oil-exporting nations to navigate the energy transition, with its vast sovereign wealth fund and its diversified economy, the country remains vulnerable to the economic shocks that are increasingly common in a world that is rapidly transitioning away from fossil fuels. The social tensions and cultural anxieties that are afflicting many other Western nations are also beginning to appear in Norway. The country has experienced a rise in political extremism, anti-immigrant sentiment, and social inequality, as the pressures of globalization and demographic change challenge the traditional values of solidarity and social cohesion. The Norwegian model, while resilient, is not immune to these pressures, and the Norwegian people are engaged in a difficult and contentious debate about the future of their welfare state and the values that underpin it. The challenges of an aging population and a declining birth rate also pose a serious threat to Norway's long-term economic viability, as the ratio of workers to retirees continues to decline and the burden on the social welfare system grows. The Norwegian government is responding to these challenges with a combination of reforms and adjustments, but the process is slow and difficult, and it is not clear whether the system can adapt quickly enough to avoid a crisis. The globalization of the economy also poses significant challenges for Norway, as the country's businesses are increasingly exposed to competition from low-wage countries and the pressures of global supply chains. The Norwegian model, with its high wages, generous social benefits, and strong labor protections, is being tested by the forces of globalization, and there is a growing debate about how to protect the country's competitive advantage while preserving its core values. As we stand at this critical juncture, the future of Norway forks into 2 distinct paths, 2 completely different destinies. In the first future, Norway successfully navigates the energy transition, invests its oil wealth in sustainable technologies, and preserves its social welfare model. The country remains a beacon of progress, a model of social democracy and sustainable development for the rest of the world. In the second future, Norway fails to adapt, clinging to its oil dependence and allowing its social model to be undermined by globalization, demographic pressures, and internal political divisions. The country loses its prosperity, its social cohesion, and its global influence. The question is not whether Norway will remain wealthy. It is whether Norway can remain true to the values that made it wealthy. The map never lies, but the people draw it always have a reason. We just saw why Norway became so rich. But there is one nation quietly watching their playbook and preparing its own transformation. That is the next journey. Which future do you believe? Comment Future 1 or Future 2. And subscribe to Atlas Beyond so you never miss the next journey.